Start my video. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As it is now 10 o'clock a.m., the meeting is called to order. This is the annual stockholders meeting of A. Soriano Corporation. We are conducting this meeting virtually or through video conference for the second time in consideration of the health and safety of our stockholders, employees, and directors, and because of the restriction on public gatherings imposed by the government. Allow me to introduce my fellow presenters for this meeting. Joining me is our Corporate Secretary, Attorney Lorna Pataho Kapunan, and our Chairman of the Board of Directors, Mr. Andres Soriano III.
Good morning.
A while ago, as per our usual practice, your directors had a board meeting conducted virtually as well. My fellow directors are also participating to the live stream of this annual meeting, which may be accessed through our website. Our stock transfer agent, Stock Transfer Service Incorporated, validated our voting results prior to the meeting. I have been appointed by the Board of Directors to act as the presiding officer for this annual meeting. So, Ms. Secretary, can you please certify to the proof of notice of this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. As Corporate Secretary of A. Soriano Corporation, I hereby certify that the notice of annual meeting of stockholders and procedure for registration, participation, and voting in the 2021 annual stockholders meeting of A. Soriano Corporation were published in full in the business section of two newspapers of general circulation, namely the Manila Times and Malaya Business Insights on March 24 and 25, 2021. Likewise, digital copies of the notice of annual meeting of stockholders and procedure for this annual meeting, the definitive information statement, and the annual report of the company have all been uploaded and may be viewed in PSE Edge and the company's website.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary. May I know if we have a quorum?
Mr. Presiding Officer, I hereby certify that 2,272,195,684 shares of stock, or 90.89% of the issued and outstanding capital stock of the corporation, are represented either by proxy or are present through remote communication in accordance with our procedure for this annual meeting. There is therefore a quorum.
Okay, the meeting will now proceed with the consideration and approval of the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting held on June 17, 2020. Ms. Secretary, can you please explain and inform us of the voting results for this item?
The minutes of the annual stockholders meeting held on June 17, 2020 have been available for examination by the stockholders in the office of the corporate secretary this past year. Also, digital copy of the minutes has been posted since last year in the company's website. Management is proposing for the approval of the resolution flashed in your screen. Resolved that the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting held on June 17, 2020 be as it is hereby approved. On the voting results, 2,272,195,584 shares of stock, or 90.89% of the total outstanding shares of stock of the company, have voted in favor of the resolution, either by proxy or through the online stockholders voting system, in accordance with our procedure for this annual meeting. The resolution is therefore approved.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary. The next item on the agenda is the presentation of the annual report for 2020. The digital copy of the annual report has been posted in the company's website. May we now invite the chairman to give the highlights of the 2020 annual report which includes the financial results for the year ended December 31st, 2020, and the operation reports of our subsidiaries and affiliates. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cuyacán. Fellow shareholders, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our 2020 virtual annual stockholders meeting. We have been able to weather the pandemic over the past 12 months through the dedication, faith, and perseverance of our stakeholders and everyone within the Anascor Group. On behalf of your board of directors, thank you. I also would like to express our thanks and respect to our selfless medical professionals and the critical service workers who continue to strive unwaveringly to save lives. As a result of the pandemic lockdowns, gross domestic product contracted by 9.5% in 2020. Virtually all sectors of the economy, with the exception of e-commerce and food delivery services, registered negative growth rates. Inward remittances from overseas Filipino workers also decreased, the first time in several decades. For 2020, Anascor reported a net income of 166 million pesos, as compared to a net income of 1.8 billion pesos in 2019. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index fell by almost 9% in 2020, and our domestic equity portfolio generated a loss of 784 million pesos. This loss was offset by a gain of 638 million pesos from our investment in YMAbs Therapeutics, Inc., a clinical stage biotechnology company listed on the NASDAQ in the United States, and by gains from our investments in foreign and local securities. As a consequence, our overall financial portfolio ended 2020 with a modest loss. The growth potential of our investments in local and foreign private equity funds remains robust, and we are confident that the PSC will recover over time. Despite the challenges brought about by the pandemic, our majority-owned subsidiaries performed admirably. Phelps Dodge Philippines Energy Products Corporation, or PDP, generated a healthy profit, and Amampulo broke even. Unfortunately, these positive results were offset by losses at AGP International Holdings, PTE Limited. The accounting standards requires us to recognize our share in AG&P's losses, resulting in a zero carrying value of our 21.4% investment in AG&P as of the end of December 2020. This means that any future losses by AG&P will no longer impact Anascor's financial results. Notwithstanding this setback, and given Anascor's strong financial position and liquidity, on February 18 of this year, your board of directors declared a cash dividend of 50 centavos per share, payable today to you, our shareholders. Anascor's book value per share decreased by 72 centavos to 15 pesos and 23 centavos as of December 31, 2020. PDP weathered 2 months of complete closure and still produced very healthy results. For 2020, PDP registered total revenue of 6.5 billion pesos and a net income of 692 million pesos, a decline of 14% versus the previous year. A favorable exchange rate, strong copper prices, and prudent cost management helped maintain healthy margins. A strong balance sheet enabled the company to extend credit terms to its distributors and provide assistance during these trying times. In all our subsidiaries, we have not let go one person, and this, I think, is quite an achievement and shows the strength of your company. PDP paid Anscor a management fee of 87 million pesos and a cash dividend of 250 million pesos in 2020. We are proud to say that the COVID-19 safety plans developed by Seven Seas Resorts and Leisure, Inc., the owner of the Amampulo Resort, became the gold standard for the industry. The stringent protocols that were presented to the Department of Tourism led to the resort's reopening at 50% capacity in June 2020, after nearly 4 months of non-operation, and eventually led to 100% capacity in December. Through initiatives targeted at the domestic market, Amampulo saw steady gains in occupancy throughout the second half of 2020. The resort finished the year with an average occupancy of 37% and a total revenue of 646 million pesos. Although occupancy and revenue were lower than the previous year, Amampulo maintained an EBITDA of 125 million pesos. Amampulo continues to receive numerous international awards, nominations, and citations for being one of the best luxury resorts in the Philippines, including being Asia's leading private island and dive resort. Atram Investment Management Partners Corporation is the leading independent asset management firm in the Philippines. Atram's assets under management stood at 131 billion pesos at the end of 2020, 6% lower than the prior year's AUM. This decrease was attributed to the negative market revaluation of the local equity market that was partially offset by positive net fund inflows of 4 billion pesos. Seedbox, Atram's digital wealth technology platform for retail clients, expanded its base to over 1 million users. Atram and Seedbox also jointly collaborated with the Bangko Sentral ng Filipinas to digitally relaunch the Personal Equity Retirement Account Program, the voluntary pension pillar for Filipinos, that aims to reach 5 million investors over the next 5 years. Turning to the KSA Realty Corporation, owner of the Enterprise Center, the office leasing industry was one of the sectors most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, as government-mandated lockdowns affected virtually all tenants. Average occupancy during the year was 95%, marginally lower than last year's 98%. The drop in occupancy was offset by a 5% increase in effective rent, resulting in a net income of 1.1 billion pesos. KSA declared 850 million pesos in dividends in 2020, of which Anscor has received 121 million pesos. AG&P's construction and engineering operations were severely curtailed by the pandemic. Lockdowns and lack of liquidity in India halted the development of its liquefied natural gas terminal and distribution operations. Despite this, AG&P broke ground on its first LNG terminal in India and rolled out compressed natural gas stations across India, where it has an exclusive concession to distribute natural gas to 66 million people. AGMP registered a net loss of $103 million against revenues of $97 million, the third consecutive year of losses. Anscor remains very concerned with the delayed development of AGMP's LNG projects and its financial performance and standing. I will now review the assets Anscor has dedicated to early stage and private equity opportunities. Anscor began investing in Y-mAbs Therapeutics in 2015, and the company was listed on the NASDAQ in September 2018. Its advanced product line includes 2 pivotal stage treatments for cancer, which received its first approval from the US Food and Drug Administration in November 2020. Anscor has invested $5 million in Macquarie ASEAN Technology Investment Holdings 2 LP, a special purpose vehicle invested exclusively in the shares of Grab Holdings, Inc. Grab is the leading on-demand transportation and food delivery provider in Southeast Asia, with leading market shares in 7 countries, including the Philippines. Anscor committed $10 million in Navigar 2 LP, a Philippine-focused private equity fund, which began deploying funds in early 2020. Investments are focused on e-commerce, technology services, and business process outsourcing sectors. All 3 are exciting areas that stand to gain from the digital transformation trends that were accelerated by the pandemic. Anscor has also made a total investment of $3.3 million in Sierra Madre Philippines LP, another Philippine-based private equity fund, out of a $9 million commitment we have with them. The fund has invested in logistics, semiconductor services, and the BPO sectors. Other early-stage investments include Madaket Inc., an innovative US software service platform that automates healthcare provider data and management processes, and Medify, a Philippine-based online healthcare platform that connects doctors and patients. Throughout the ongoing pandemic, the Andres Soriano Foundation has responded to the needs of its staff and small island communities it serves, without losing sight of its mission as a social development organization. Over 4 million pesos in cash and in-kind donations were received and distributed to those in need in the critical months of April, May, and June 2020. Its programs, Small Island Sustainable Development, Cancer Care, and Disaster Relief Response and Rehabilitation continued, as did assistance for local farmers, fishermen, and other workers from displaced sectors. In addition, it provided virtual learning facilities for children affected by the pandemic. Protection and conservation of marine life in partnership with barangays and municipal governments improved live coral cover and increased the presence of a variety of fish. In turn, a good fishing year helped supply food and income for workers displaced during the lockdown. Coastal cleanup continued at various sites, and mangrove seedlings were planted both before and after the lockdown. Anscor has released its second corporate sustainability report, which adheres to the Global Reporting Initiative Sustainability Reporting Standard. Looking to the future, we expect economic activity to recover over the next 12 months, although this is premised on the effective vaccination rollout by the government. BSP provided liquidity, government-sponsored stimulus, the Build program, and fiscal reforms such as the CREATE bill will also aid in the economic activity and recovery. Looking forward, our key subsidiaries and affiliates are positioned to benefit when the economy recovers. The fortitude and collective efforts of the Anscor Group's management, its workforce, and its partners has helped us through these challenging times. Helping all those affected by the pandemic, especially our employees, the frontliners, and critical service workers, is paramount to the company's commitment to its stakeholders. Protecting stakeholder investments and sustaining stakeholders' trust remains our guideposts. Your company's conservative and strong balance sheet served us well in 2020 and leaves Anscor well positioned for the anticipated recovery. Unfortunately, the recent spike in COVID cases and return to stricter quarantine measures will delay our economic recovery. After a positive start to the year, the PSC and our investments in YMAbs has reacted to the downside, which will impact our portfolio and consequently our financial results for the first quarter of 2021. We do expect these to recover in the coming months. To all our employees across our subsidiaries and affiliates, thank you. To our shareholders, your constant support has helped us through this storm. And to our directors, thank you for your guidance. Let us all take care and stay well. Thank you and a very good morning. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for a very positive message. We will now entertain questions from the stockholders, and for this purpose, we receive a question sent to email at registration@anscor.com.ph in accordance with our procedure for this annual meeting. Ms. Secretary, can you please read the question?
The question is, with the continuing situation in our country due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the reimposition of the enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila and nearby provinces, what steps have the company undertaken in order to ensure the viability of its businesses?
Thank you. The steps we have taken comply with all the government regulations. Furthermore, we clean our offices regularly, and we also test our employees when they come in. Our employees have been given the opportunity to work from home unless they have to come to the office. And when they do come to the office, we provide transportation. We will continue to follow these guidelines and safety protocols. Also, I'm happy to inform you that we have ordered some Moderna vaccines through the ICTSI Foundation, which we will provide to our employees and our subsidiaries. We have weathered the challenges of the pandemic last year, and I am confident that we will do so again this year. Your company, because of its employees, is in a fantastic position to take advantage of any opportunity that is available to us once we recover from this dreadful pandemic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Since there are no further questions, the next item is the approval of the 2020 annual report and the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. copies of which have been uploaded in the company's website. Ms. Secretary, will you please inform us of the proposed resolution and the voting results for this particular item?
Management is proposing for the approval of the resolution flashed in your screen. Resolved that the 2020 annual report and the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2020 be as it is hereby approved. On the voting results, 2,272,195,584 shares of stock, or 90.89% of the total outstanding shares of stock of the company, have voted in favor of the resolution either by proxy or through the online stockholders voting system. The resolution is therefore approved.
The next item of business is the election of directors. Ms. Secretary, will you please inform us of the nominations received?
Yes, Mr. Presiding Officer, pursuant to Section 3A of Article 4 of the Bylaws of the Corporation, the following were nominated on March 1, 2021. Mr. Andres Soriano III, Mr. Eduardo J. Soriano, Mr. Ernest K. Cuyigkeng, Mr. Jose C. Ibaceta, Mr. Oscar J. Ilado, Mr. Johnson Robert G. Go Jr., and Mr. Alfonso S. Yuchenko III. Mr. Oscar J. Ilado and Mr. Alfonso S. Yuchenko III have been nominated as the independent directors of the company. On the voting results, all the nominees for election as directors have garnered at least 312,500,001 votes, which is the minimum number of votes required for election as directors of the company. They are hereby declared as the duly elected members of the board of directors for the ensuing year.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary, and congratulations to my fellow directors. The next item of business is the approval of the continuation of Mr. Oscar J. Hilado to act as independent director of the company. Ms. Secretary, can you please inform us of the voting results for this item?
Management is proposing for the approval of the resolution flashed in your screen. Resolved that the continuation of Mr. Oscar J. Ilado to act as independent director of the company be as it is hereby approved. On the voting results, 2,272,195,284 shares of stock, or 90.89% of the total outstanding shares of stock of the company, have voted in favor of the resolution either by proxy or through the online stockholders voting system. The resolution is therefore approved.
Thank you. The next item of business is the appointment of your corporation's external auditors. Management has proposed the appointment of CC Gores Velayo and Company. Ms. Secretary, can you please inform us of the voting results for this item?
Management is proposing for the approval of the resolution flashed in your screen. Resolved that CC Gores Velayo and Company be as is hereby appointed as the external auditors of the company. On voting results, 2,272,195,584 shares of stock, or 90.89% of the total outstanding shares of stock of the company, have voted in favor of the resolution, either by proxy or through the online stockholders voting system. The resolution is therefore approved.
The next item of business is the ratification of all acts, contracts, investments, and resolutions of the Board of Directors and Management since the last annual meeting set forth in the minutes book, the annual report, the audited financial statements, or as disclosed in reports to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Philippine Stock Exchange. Ms. Secretary, will you please inform us of the proposed resolution and the voting results for this item?
Management is proposing for the approval of the resolution flashed in your screen. Resolved that all acts, contracts, investments, and resolutions of the Board of Directors and management since the last annual meeting, as set forth in the minutes book, the annual report, and the audited financial statements, or as disclosed in reports to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Philippine Stock Exchange, be as it is hereby approved. On the voting results, 2,272,195,584 shares of stock, or 90.89% of the total outstanding shares of stock of the company, have voted in favor of the resolution, either by proxy or through the online stockholders voting system. The resolution is therefore approved.
If there are no other matters that the stockholders wish to take up, on behalf of your chairman and the board of directors, I would like to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks and appreciation to our staff, employees, and officers for their support and dedication to the company, and to you, our fellow stakeholders, for your continued support and confidence in your company, especially during these challenging and uncertain times. I would like now to entertain a motion for adjournment of the meeting.
I am Jose Cayog, stockholder. I move to adjourn the meeting.
I am Emelinda Orozco, a stockholder. I second the motion.
Thank you. The motion is now carried. The meeting is hereby adjourned, and I certainly hope we can see each other next year. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lorna. Thanks, Ernest. And thank you, shareholders, for attending this meeting and fellow directors. Thank you.